another video. So today I'm going to be talking about 7 common misconceptions about leopard geckos. So with reptiles, and specifically leopard geckos, there is a lot of bad care out there, and there are some misconceptions and myths that people say about leopard geckos that aren't necessarily true. And I think it's kind of important that you know these things so that you don't end up caring for your leopard gecko incorrectly. Because with leopard geckos, even the slightest care mistake can actually go really wrong and be harmful to your leopard gecko. So I feel like it's important that you should know these things, and know some things that aren't true about leopard geckos that some people say. Because leopard geckos haven't been in the pet trade forever, and not everything is known about them and how they should be cared for. So there are a lot of people that just haven't done a whole lot of research. I'm not saying I know everything. I don't know everything about leopard geckos. There probably is a lot more that I could know, and there might be some things that I'm getting wrong. So please don't necessarily just only listen to what I say. Look at what other people say and just decide for yourself what is true. But there are a lot of people that spread misinformation about leopard geckos, and how they should be cared for, and it's important that you know what is right and what is wrong so that you don't end up caring for your leopard gecko incorrectly. So the first misconception is that leopard geckos can't see red or blue light. So this is more or less true. Leopard geckos can't see the colors red or blue, but they can see the light that's coming from it. So what this has to do with them, if you don't know, is that a lot of people use night bulbs that produce red or blue light. And they say that leopard geckos can't see them, so it's fine and won't disturb their day and night cycle. But actually, this can be really dangerous because they actually can see the light that's coming from it, and it can disturb their cycle. Even though they can't see the color red or blue, they can still see the light that's coming from it, and it can still disturb their cycle. And that's dangerous because leopard geckos are crepuscular, and they're usually awake at dawn and dusk when it would be dark outside, and when it's light, that kind of is going to disturb their cycle and get them kind of confused, and that can be dangerous to them because it's not what would be like in the wild. So yeah, you probably shouldn't use any day or night reptile bulbs for your leopard gecko. So the second misconception is that female leopard geckos can be housed together peacefully. So most people know that two male leopard geckos should not be housed together under any circumstances because they will fight. But with females, a lot of people say if they're the same age and they're the same size, and they're both for sure females, you can keep them together. But this is not true. So to explain this, in the wild, leopard geckos usually are not around other leopard geckos. They don't live in groups. They're usually solitary for the most part. For mating, they won't be completely solitary, but for the most part, for most of their life, they are on their own and they are not around other leopard geckos. If you keep 2 leopard geckos together in a small space, they are not very social animals. They're mostly solitary in the wild, and there's a good chance they'll fight whether they're male or female, or no matter what size they are or age, because it's just their instinct, and they display dominance to each other in aggressive ways. I've even seen this a few times in my own leopard geckos, even though they're both females. They do show dominance to each other sometimes, like when they're close to each other. And yeah, Even if they seem fine with each other one day, they might be fighting and really hurting each other the next day, and they can really hurt each other. There have been people that have actually had their leopard geckos really injure each other and even kill each other, and this actually happens, and I would really recommend you don't keep any two leopard geckos in the same cage, unless it's for a small amount of time, like when you're breeding them. But they are aggressive to other leopard geckos and do not normally come upon them in the wild. So it's very risky to house them together, and I would definitely not recommend you do this. The third one is that leopard geckos should not be housed in enclosures over 20 gallons. So a lot of people say this, and this is not true at all. They just get it mixed up because if you house them in like a huge cage that has nothing in it, obviously they're going to feel stressed and they're going to not really like it. They'd rather have a small place if they're in like a huge cage that has nothing in it. If you crowd the cage and have a lot of stuff in it, they're going to feel more secure because they'll have places to hide, places to go. And it's actually even better than a small enclosure because in the wild, leopard geckos can basically go wherever they want. They have free range of wherever they want to go. And 20 gallons is actually pretty small for an adult leopard gecko. And if you can, I would definitely recommend you go bigger. I'm going to probably eventually go bigger with both my leopard geckos. With Mocha right now, I am currently making a BIOACTIVE 50-gallon enclosure for her. But other than that, both my leopard geckos are currently in 20 gallons. But it is fine to go over 20 gallons and actually very beneficial if you can go over 20 gallons. No matter what some people say, it's actually really good for them to have a cage over 20 gallons as long as you put enough stuff in it. They will not feel stressed out. They'll actually really like it, and it might actually get them to be out and about more and actually exploring their cage. So I would definitely recommend you do get a cage maybe eventually that is above 20 gallons because no matter what some people say, it actually is pretty small for them. Both my leopard geckos are pretty big. They're kind of like really big for females, and they really don't have that much space in their 20 gallons right now, I've realized, and I want to upgrade them because it seems like they don't have hardly any space in their 20 gallons. And yeah, it's actually really good for them to have cages above 20 gallons. They won't get stressed out like some people say because obviously they will if there's nothing in it, but if they have something in it, then it's actually really beneficial. The next one is that adult leopard geckos can be housed in 10-gallon cages. So I've kind of already addressed this in the last one, but 10 gallons is like super tiny for an adult leopard gecko. Baby leopard geckos, it's fine. It's not preferable to house them in 10-gallon cages. If you can go bigger, that's way better. But 10 gallons is the minimum for a baby leopard gecko. An adult leopard gecko should have at least 20 gallons because they need space to actually roam around and be able to get the exercise they need. And if they don't have hardly any space, which they wouldn't in a 10-gallon, they are going to not be very healthy, and they possibly could get overweight because they're just not getting the exercise they need. And it's also very crowded and small for them, and it's not going to fit everything they need, like their water dishes and all the hides they need. They need at least 3 hides, and it's just not going to fit them very well. So you definitely should have at least a 20-gallon if you can't go bigger than that. No matter what some people say, it just is not right to put them in a 10-gallon. They're just way too small. they're fine for baby leopard geckos, but definitely not adult. The fifth misconception is that leopard geckos are nocturnal. So, a lot of people say that leopard geckos are nocturnal, but there actually is a slight difference. Leopard geckos are not nocturnal like you would think. They're actually crepuscular, like I've said before. They are most active at dawn and dusk, which is like really early morning and the evening. So that's when they're going to be most active and walking around their cage. And they're not nocturnal, and that means you should be handling them, for the most part, in the early morning or evening, and feeding them in the early morning or evening, depending on, like, your schedule and stuff. But it's best to feed them and handle them when, like, they would be most active. I occasionally handle my geckos, like, in the daytime, like, for videos. When I do videos like this, I occasionally handle them for small amounts of time in the day when I have good lighting. But most of the time, I handle them in the evening. And, yeah, it's important that you don't disturb their cycle too much, because they are not fully nocturnal like a lot of people say they are. They are actually crepuscular. So the next one is that loose substrate is bad for leopard geckos. So, although there is the risk of impaction with some loose substrates, I don't think this is much of a problem. As long as your leopard gecko is healthy and you're not feeding them on the substrate, usually it shouldn't be too much of a problem. And if you have a lot of stuff on the substrate, there is like very small risk of impaction. And loose substrate is also very beneficial for leopard geckos as long as you're using the right ones. Like, I would recommend like a play sand soil mix, or an excavator clay soil mix, because, like I've said before in multiple videos, leopard geckos should have digging enrichment, and solid substrate doesn't really mimic their natural habitat very much, and you definitely should have something loose that they can dig in and that will be like their natural habitat. And a lot of people are like fully against loose substrates because they know that some do cause impaction, and that is true, some can cause impaction, but as long as your leopard gecko is healthy and you're doing everything the way it should be and your care is correct, there is like a very minimal risk of impaction, and it's very beneficial to do that, even though there is a very slight risk. Loose substrate is beneficial to your leopard gecko, and I feel like it is good for them to be provided that. So not all loose substrate is bad for leopard geckos. Some are, like, for example, gravel or sand alone can cause impaction, and yeah, you definitely will want to stay away from those because those do pose as more of a risk of impaction than some other substrates. So I still would recommend you stay away from those. But for the most part, impaction is not a huge risk as long as you're taking care of your leopard gecko the way you should be. So the last misconception is that leopard geckos are super easy to care for. So, yeah, a lot of care guides say that leopard geckos are like the easiest reptile to care for, and this is, for the most part, true. They are extremely easy to care for a reptile, but keep in mind that most reptiles are not the easiest kind of pet to take care of. They are more exotic than a lot of pets, and they have very specific needs that if they aren't met, their health could fail, and you really need to provide what they need in order to keep them healthy, and a lot of them do require frequent maintenance, like leopard geckos, and you really need to do extensive research on them, because they're not the most common pet, as you probably know, and there's a lot of ways you can go wrong in caring for them. They're not necessarily the most easy pet to care for because there's like so many ways you could go wrong, and you definitely want to provide the best care you possibly can for them. And keep in mind that leopard geckos are just not a super easy pet to care for. They definitely are compared to a lot of reptiles, but they still do require frequent maintenance, and you need to do your research before you actually get one, because if you don't, your leopard gecko is not going to end up very well, and they're probably not going to be very healthy, and your care is probably not going to be too good. With some pets, you don't need to do a ton of research, but with most reptiles, since their care is so controversial and they just aren't the most popular pet, and there are so many like different ways you can care for them and different opinions out there, you need to do a lot of research to make sure you're caring for them right. So yeah, I hope this helped you guys. I think that's just about it. If you weren't subscribed already, don't forget to push that button and push the bell to get notified when I post a new video. And don't forget to leave a like and a comment. And yeah, if you have anything that you would like me to do a video on, I'd be more than happy to do that. If it's something that I can do, just leave it in the comment section, and I would really appreciate it, because I don't have an unending list of video ideas. It's kind of easy to kind of get low on ideas. But I'm gonna keep trying to get videos out for you guys, and I have actually been getting progress on my bioactive cage, and hopefully I'll be able to do that, and hopefully it won't be forever until I actually get that video out there. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I think that's about it. Bye.